Hey guys, this is JP Dillon again. I just wanted to show you one of the other projects that I've been working on and off. As you know, I'm kind of a vintage nut. I like old televisions and old hi-fi. This is a 1967 Sansui 3000A, which I picked up a couple years ago with the original box, original manuals, everything except for the wood case. And it looks really pretty, but it had a busted amp, and I could not get the amp to be stable even after practically rebuilding every component. The trick is to find a matched set of outputs, which I could not do. So what I did then was I took an idea from Dr. Audio, aka Warren Blender, and he said he built a similar design for his 3000A based on the UPC 1298 Mark V, which is a wonderful little driver IC. And as you can see here, I built a board. He luckily had a prototype board already built. I put this one together myself. These are the heat sinks from the old driver transistors, which worked very nicely to dissipate the power output. These are a combination Class A and Class AB driver stage. He recommended that I use some extra driver transistors kind of to add dampening and a better impedance matching device, which I did. As you can see, it's very cleanly put together. Everything fits on the board here. I'm using MJ21193 and 94 for output transistors. Perforated emitter devices, very beefy. And I also did some other modifications. The giant relay here in the center of the machine is for the power switch. I'm using the old power switch to fire the relay, which then turns on the mains. The old switch is a 3 amp, and it would not handle the increased capacitance that I put in the power supply. I've gone from 2200 microfarads to 12,000 microfarads, and this was pulled out of an Onkyo M504 junker machine that I had. Makes for a very nice, stable power supply and a long turn-off stage. As far as this amplifier, I had to play around a bit with a feedback loop. As you can see here, I have some chokes in parallel with the emitter resistors, and another choke back here in series with a capacitor that goes as part of the feedback loop. I was having some parasitic oscillations in the higher power output and higher frequency range, so stop that. And we'll look underneath the board here, and as you can see underneath the board, I've got more wiring and just more of the assembly. The power supply tied in right here. Everything is very symmetrical. I'm kind of anal about that. I'm just running it directly off the power supply. I contemplated, actually, since there's so much room in here, putting 2 transformers in, maybe leaving this one in for the main output stage and then putting a secondary transformer in just for the sole purpose of running the preamp and stuff. The amplifier sounds great. But the problem is the preamp sucks. I'm still using the stock preamp card, and that's going to go soon. The problems I've run into the preamp was that it was very noisy. They essentially have an open loop gain. It's not controlled at all. There's a very high noise floor. The input impedance on this is very poor. Modern devices can easily drive it into clipping. So initially I thought, well, okay, I'll just change the location of the volume control to the output to cut down on the hiss. And then I had difficulties with loading down the front end of the preamp. So then what I ended up doing was installing these variable gain feedback loops here in the preamp, which then helped a little bit. But I still found out that the dynamic range of the preamp was rather limited. So I'm just going to scrap this board, and I'm going to build a new preamp board, probably based on some really nice quad bifets or maybe some burr rounds or something like that, something really decent. Otherwise, the reason why I wanted to fix this thing was because it has such a great radio and because it looks so damn classy. They based this design from the Sansui 508 tube receiver, which came a couple of years prior, and I really like the look of it. And I have all the original literature, the operating instructions, which is down here. I have the service manual, which of course isn't going to be correct for the power amp anymore. I'll have to draw my own schematics again for that. the front panel information guide, which tells you what everything does, and then the rear panel information, which tells you where everything hooks up. And it's been sitting in the dust for a while, but I redid the case, a nice high gloss black. It looks very pretty, and eventually this will all go back together, and I should have a pretty good thing. I have all my components. What I have to do now is build a regulated power supply for the preamp, because I want it to be nice and clean. I'm just going to use a plus and minus 15 volt power supply, highly regulated, highly filtered. And I think then afterwards I'll build the preamp and maybe add another protection circuit. Right now I'm just using fuses for the speakers, and we'll see where this goes. And I think that in the end I'm going to have a really cool little Frankenstein beast. A lot of what I've had came from donor machines, and all the Sansui fanatics have already sent me lots of hate emails. I posted this elsewhere, and they say I'm a sacrilegious anti-Sansui nutcase. And yes, that may be true in a sense, but really what I'm doing is I'm taking something that looks pretty, and rather than using the horribly crappy amplifier design that was barely stable to begin with, I'm building a very rock-solid stable amp to go in its place. Just to give you an idea of how rock solid this thing is, I ran this thing at full output, 45 watts per channel, into an 8 ohm load all day, non-stop, in a room that was about 78 degrees Fahrenheit. And the heatsink temperature, which is the back panel is all solid aluminum and serves as the heatsink. The heatsink never got above 42 degrees Celsius. That is damn good, stable engineering. Now, out of curiosity, I ran it on a 4 ohm load. And the 4 ohm load got the heatsink to a toasty 65 degrees Celsius, but it didn't get hotter than that. So this is going to be a 4 ohm load stable amplifier that not only sounds good, but is overbuilt and will probably outlast me, assuming I don't short out the speaker wires. But that's what the protection circuit's going to be for. In any case, stay tuned. I am sorry that I don't post as frequently as I should, but work is busy, life is busy, and maybe next time I post about this thing, it will actually be complete and working well. So stay tuned and be patient in waiting.